presented by Westminster Communities of Florida. Learn more at ollie.eckerd.edu.
Lakeland's incoming mayor takes charge of a city on the move. It's one of the fastest growing metros in the country, which is a big opportunity and an enormous challenge. I'm Matthew Petty, and this hour on Florida Matters, live and local, we'll talk with Mayor-elect Sarah Roberts-McCarley about her vision for Lakeland. Then, last month's fatal crash outside a bar in Ybor City sparked an outpouring of grief and questions about why law enforcement were chasing the speeding driver. We'll take a closer look at when chases are warranted and when to back off. And robo-taxis. How would you feel about sharing the road with driverless cars? Autonomous vehicle company Waymo is driving to expand its robo-taxi service to our region. We'll talk about it and take your calls and emails on Florida Matters Live and Local. Join the conversation by calling 813-755-6562 or email floridamatters@wusf.org. First, these headlines.
Live from NPR News, I'm Lakshmi Singh. A White House official confirms that the Trump administration is announcing $12 billion in one-time payments to farmers in response to a decrease in export demand in the wake of this year's tariff hikes. The payments will be announced during a roundtable event hosted by President Trump at the White House, featuring affected farmers, Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent, and Agriculture Secretary Brooke Rollins. The move comes as the administration looks to placate economic concerns from key Trump constituencies as the tariff effects play out. Netflix and Paramount are in a bidding war for Warner Brothers Discovery. Today, Paramount, a Skydance corporation headed up by the Ellison family, put in an all-cash tender offer for $30 a share. NPR's David Folkenflik reports on the factors that have led Paramount to offer shareholders $18 billion more in cash than Netflix.
Paramount's looking at the landscape and saying we're too small. We can't compete. Netflix is the world's largest streamer. It's the nation's largest streamer. There's also Amazon, which, it bought MGM, which is a small little studio, but it's, Amazon has all the money in the world, the everything store. It's looking at Apple, and it's looking at Disney, which several years ago bulked up by acquiring most of the Murdoch's Fox entertainment properties out there in Hollywood. Paramount says, look, if we combine together, we're two of the old-time studios, Paramount and Warner Brothers. We can do this. We have all these, cable properties. You have cable properties. Let's be in business together. Let's take on these giants.
NPR's David Folkenflik reporting. With a hostile takeover bid looming, it's one battle after another that's given Warner Brothers a reason to celebrate. Paul Anderson's film has scored a leading 9 nominations to the 83rd Golden Globe Awards, including for its cast Leonardo DiCaprio, Deanna Taylor, Sean Penn, and Chase Infinity. Days after members of Congress saw a video of a U.S. military strike on a boat that some are calling a war crime, a Democratic lawmaker alleges Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth does not want that video published. NPR's Luke Garrett reports.
House Armed Services Committee ranking member Adam Smith got to watch the video of the strike on survivors of an attack on an alleged drug boat in the Caribbean. Smith, a Democrat from Washington state, called the tape, quote, deeply disturbing on ABC News.
It seems pretty clear they don't want to release this video because they don't want people to see it.
But Republican Senator Eric Schmidt of Missouri told ABC News that the early September follow-on strike and those that followed were all legal.
They're going to carry out their mission. They executed another strike of a narco-terrorist just this past week. Those will continue, and they're completely authorized. I reviewed the 40-plus page memo by the Office of Legal Counsel.
Hegseth said the Pentagon is reviewing the strike footage to determine if it can be released. Luke Garrett, NPR News, Washington.
The Dow Jones Industrial Average is now down 239 points, or 0.5%, at 47,716. From Washington, it's NPR News.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include Progressive, with small business insurance for protecting a variety of business types with multiple coverage options, designed to fit business owners' needs. More about small business insurance is at progressivecommercial.com.
You're listening to WUSF 89.7. I'm Craig Kopp. A redevelopment project in St. Petersburg proposed earlier this year is itself getting a big makeover. WUSF's Ricardo Cuomo explains what is changing.
Originally proposed in April, the new Center for the Arts included a convention center, renovations to nearby buildings, and the demolition of Al Lang Stadium, home of the Tampa Bay Rowdies. But after a series of discussions, developers want to not only keep the stadium, but make it even bigger. Design consultant John Curran revealed the updated project to the St. Pete City Council on Thursday.
What we got out of conversations with the Rowdies was if they were to stay and be here, probably would make more sense to build a separate building that could house their lockers, their offices, and so on and so forth.
While City Council members said they liked the project, they still have concerns about its cost. The committee will meet with the developers again early next year. Ricardo Cuomo, WUSF 89.7 News.
You can see the full list of changes at WUSF.org. The next president of the University of South Florida could be confirmed by the end of the week. The State University System's Board of Governors will meet on Friday to confirm the selection of Moaz Limayam. The former dean of the USF Muma College of Business was approved in October by the USF Board of Trustees, but the Board of Governors still needs to sign off on him. Limayam's 5-year contract would give him an annual salary of $1.25 million. He would also be eligible for a performance-based bonus every year of up to half of his base pay. Limayam has served as president of the University of North Florida since 2022. Got to be liking these cheaper gas prices right before the holidays, but they might not last that long. AAA says the average price of a gallon of regular unleaded dropped 10 cents in the last week to $2.91 a gallon. However, AAA says the pattern of lower prices for a couple of weeks, followed by sharp increases, could happen again. I'm Craig Kopp, WUSF 89.7 News.
The Tony Award-winning musical about the survival of the human spirit, Les Miserables, is at Straz Center in Tampa, December 10th through December 14th. Show details and tickets at strazcenter.org.
When you sign up for WUSF's Wake Up Call newsletter, you'll be connected to what's happening. Local news, weather, culture, and events. Sign up for your Wake Up Call at WUSF.org.
This is Florida Matters, live and local, broadcasting from the Doctors Lorraine Rubis and Neil Frankel studio at WSF in Tampa. I'm Matthew Petty. Lakeland's new mayor takes office next month. Sarah Roberts McCarley's election was noteworthy for a couple reasons. She's the first woman elected to the role, though not the first woman to hold the office, and her campaign raised the most money for a mayoral race in the history of the city. Roberts McCarley takes charge of a booming city. Its population is creeping towards 116,000 people. That makes it the biggest city in the Polk County metro, and it's the second fastest growing metro area in the nation. She campaigned on government accountability and transparency and spending public money wisely, and she joins us now. Sarah, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much, Matthew, for having me.
And if you've got a question for Sarah Roberts McCarley about Lakeland, give us a call, 813-755-6562. You can also send an email to FloridaMatters@WUSF.org. All right, so this was a pretty, hard-fought contest, right? You beat 3 other candidates for mayor. What do you think convinced voters to back you?
Well, I've been very privileged over the last 7 years to serve the city of Lakeland as a city commissioner. So I believe my experience was really the linchpin to being a successful candidate for mayor. I also have a breadth of knowledge about Polk County. I was born and raised in the area.
Mm-hmm.
I left from
Davenport, right?
Davenport, that's right. Went to Haines City High School, graduated from Florida Southern College, and like many people who grew up throughout Florida, thought maybe I wouldn't build my professional career here. So I was gone for about 10 years, returning to Lakeland in 2003. So I really feel like I understand the community. I understand Polk County as a whole. And then I also understand the I-4 corridor pretty well. Mm-hmm. So that experience lends itself to being a successful candidate, as well as I believe I'm sincere in my passion to serve.
Yeah. No. Okay. So understanding the I-4 corridor is interesting because the whole area is changing so rapidly, right? I mean, growth has got to be the biggest thing that you're thinking about right now, or one of the biggest.
Yes, it is one of the biggest, really in partnership with infrastructure needs, because we have an aging infrastructure throughout the state of Florida, as well as not just in Lakeland proper, but I think universally Tampa struggles with that, as does Orlando, when you think about stormwater and you think about these hurricanes that are coming through and the different storms that we have to deal with that are really, the environmental attributes that we have to contend with as we see more and more people come to this state.
Yeah. Okay, so I want to ask about some of those environmental things in a moment, but let me get back to growth. So I was reading an interview you did with Lakelander magazine, and you talked about the state government and how you were saying they've done a good job balancing the budget. You're saying they've done better than the federal government, but You're taking on a pretty rapidly growing city, right? And to your point, infrastructure is expensive, like roads, schools, all that stuff costs a lot. So how are you going to do it? How are you going to make sure that you kind of manage what's happening and do it frugally?
I think the most important piece of this is in my service to the City Commission, we've changed the way we've budgeted. When I first arrived on the scene in 2019, our strategic planning process was more of a wish list for each department. And I pushed our city manager, which he did incredibly well, on let's really look at the needs of the community at large and how do we make sure that we're aligning as city commissioners and the mayor with what those needs are and how do we budget for that accordingly. Throughout Florida, you see property costs increase. Our property appraiser's office, they can increase because the volume in the market is driving all of those costs to live in the state of Florida higher and higher, which is also why you see more growth and more building that's widespread because historically we're an agriculture county.
Sure.
And you had all these swaths of land that now people have had to sell because it's so expensive to maintain and keep and the citrus industry has left and phosphate has gotten a little bit smaller.
You're saying that farmers are saying, look, I'm just going to cut my losses and get out of the
if you have a family
business.
farm, that's something it's really expensive to pay the taxes as the appraisals get higher and higher. So I think when the property is worth more, you have to either cut your losses or really view what's the best thing for your family long term. Then developers come in and they can build, different communities and neighborhoods and those type of things. So we all have to work together. But I do think the driving up of cost of land in the state has really been one of those pieces of the puzzle that has really made it difficult for us to continue to manage. It's easier for infrastructure to come into a new area like that than it is to retrofit a downtown area or an area that's historic.
Yeah, okay. We're talking with Sarah Roberts-McCarley. She's the Mayor-elect of Lakeland. If you've got a question about Lakeland and growth or a question for Sarah, give us a call, 813-755-6562. You can also email us, FloridaMatters@WUSF.org. So, back to your point you made earlier, you've been a city commissioner since 2019. You understand how Tallahassee works, right? You've been sort of taking trips to Tallahassee. You've been meeting with lawmakers and working with city lobbyists to ask for money for those infrastructure things. What kind of help do you think you're going to get from state government, though? They're in a really cost-cutting mood, right? They're really aggressively saying, local governments are spending too much. They need to cut costs. So how do you get around that?
I think it's a partnership. I think you have to have collaborative work around these issues. So you have to be able to say to your delegation, and we have a very strong delegation in Polk County specifically that represent Lakeland, where we can go to them and show them the projects that we need. When we look at, again, stormwater or wastewater and doing a western trunk line that we've needed for several years, we can go into the state government and say, this is what the city is paying for. We'd love to have your partnership. We're not going up simply with our hands out and saying you pay for everything, the state of Florida. We know we have skin in the game, and that's what we're trying to do is make sure that we can do it hand in hand with state government.
So is it just about those personal connections you have? Like if they can put a face to the ask,
it's
does that
really
help?
I think the face to the ask, but more importantly, I think being able to show that the projects are shovel ready, that they've already been planned and designed, and that we've had money that we've set aside and plugged into those projects makes it easier for them to come alongside of us and then support the initiatives that we've already seen to plan and explain to the community at large why we need those things.
So let me ask you about stormwater, because 2024 was a pretty bad year for flooding, right? You had sort of Lake Bonny was overtopping its banks. That was a problem for a lot of residents after Hurricane Milton. What has the city done since then, and what do you think you're going to be having to do to make sure that you are ready for the next big storm?
That's one thing we've been working diligently on as a commission, and our staff in our Public Works Department have been working really, really well with regard to that too. One of the things that we've had to do is look at those weak spots throughout the city and identify areas where we know storm water is not dissipating the way it should be. We also last year was, not to coin a terrible phrase, but it was a perfect storm when you had Debbie, and then we had the subsequent, it started with an H storm, Helene, and then we had Milton. So the ground was saturated, right? That was the hardest part, and you cannot displace water. If we displaced water on downstream, it's going to continue to affect the other communities beyond us. So although we could have taken Lake Parker and Lake Bonnie and redistributed some of that, which was difficult to do because you had groundwater.
How would you do that?
Well, you'd have so much groundwater coming in. It's really, really difficult. We did partner with the state of Florida as well as the Army Corps of Engineers and SwiftMud to make sure that we could do it. But then you would be flooding out the Peace River, and the city of Bartow actually has their sewage department and their wastewater treatment plants are very, very close to the Peace River. So then do you want to flood them? No. The answer to that is a very simple no.
Right.
So working together to configure out how all these entities can come together and displace some of the water.
Yeah. All right, I got a question here from a listener. This is totally aside from infrastructure, but let me put this to you. Liz from Tampa writes in an email, when I first moved to Tampa 10 years ago, all of my lesbian friends were moving to Lakeland. Now they're all fleeing the state out of terror from attacks on the LGBTQA community. I just think it's important for any city leader to have the feelings of this community on their radar because you are losing wonderful parents hugely invested in their communities to other states. So I wonder what your thoughts are on that.
Well, I feel like in the state of Florida, we have so many people coming in, and I'm proud that Lakeland is welcoming to everyone. I think that's something our mayor, my predecessor, has worked really diligently on, and we collectively do too. I am, like I said earlier, grew up in the area, and I'm from this area, and I also believe that everybody has a voice. Everyone should be at the table. Everyone should be included.
Mm-hmm. Do you think it needs more, though? I mean, just to the listener's point about attacks on the LGBTQA community, like, is there more you need to do as a city leader, an incoming city leader, to reassure that particular community?
Well, I think as city leaders, our biggest areas of focus really are public safety and infrastructure, to be very candid. As far as social issues, we can be supportive and we can be encouraging of different groups of people coming to the table. But when the rubber hits the road, as a city leader, I'm really focused on providing good quality services to the residents and to the community at large. Mm-hmm. So I think if it's a state of Florida matter, sometimes, especially throughout a campaign like we just came out of, there is confusion about what issues are within the framework of government and which are not. Mm-hmm. I hope that our city of Lakeland is welcoming to everyone.
Let me ask you a question then about what your role as mayor is going to be more broadly, because we were talking before we got on air about the fact that Lakeland does not have a strong mayor like other cities like Tampa, for example. Mm-hmm. Does the mayor of Lakeland have enough kind of control and power? Is this something that you think should be expanded, because it's more of a sort of a collaborative effort, right, in terms of government?
It is. We are a council manager form of government. We have a mayor and we have 6 other city commissioners. We all have the same amount of votes on the dais. So it's really important from a civic engagement standpoint that people understand that. I work hand in hand with the city manager, as does the rest of the commission, and I do think that I have some leverage in working with him and making sure that we are serving the people of Lakeland really, really well. I don't think that the city of Lakeland's ready for a strong mayor. I don't think we're quite large enough yet to do mm-hmm. that. And for your listeners, most of whom I know are really educated, and they do understand that a strong mayor is more of a CEO of the entire mechanism of city government. In the city of Lakeland, we represent everyone and we are the voices of the people, but we have hired a city manager who is acting CEO.
In the last few seconds we have here, Sarah, what is the first thing you want to get done when you take office?
I'm really excited to continue to do the work that I've been doing the last 7 years of being an open community and engaging as many people as possible. My personal work has been with high school students and college students and encouraging them to be civically engaged. Mm-hmm. So I really am excited to include as many voices as possible.
Sarah Roberts-McCarley, incoming mayor of Lakeland, thank you so much for your time.
Thanks for having me.
Well, coming up later in the show, there's a spotlight on police chases after last month's deadly crash in Ybor City. We'll talk about the rules for when police can pursue and take your questions. Should there be more limits on car chases? That's later on Florida Matters Live and Local. You can email floridamatters@wusf.org. Stay tuned. More to come.
Celebrate the season at St. Pete Opera's Holiday Sparkle, a festive evening with dazzling vocalists, a 40-piece orchestra, and the Tampa City Ballet. Enjoy holiday pops and a heartwarming show. Tickets at stpetopera.org.
I'm Martha Ettinger of Lakewood Ranch, a Leadership Society donor, and I'm urging you this season, to get up off your wallet and become a Cornerstone member. I will match your donation dollar for dollar up to $75,000 in order to keep the programs we all know and love.
Donate at WUSF.org.
Want to catch up on Tampa Bay area news and culture? I'm Sky LeBron, and I got you every weekday morning with the Bay Blend podcast from WUSF. It's quick, fun, and you'll discover something new every day. It's the Bay Blend, wherever you get your podcasts or at WUSF.org.
Welcome back to Florida Matters Live and Local. I'm Matthew Petty. A bit later this hour, we're going to be talking about police chases, the why and when cops should chase a fleeing suspect in a car after last month's crash in Ybor City, which killed 4 people and injured a dozen others. There are lots of questions. We want to hear from you. Should policy and practice around police chases be changed? Is holding back a wiser option? You can email FloridaMatters@WUSF.org and join the conversation in about 10 minutes. For now, though, one of St. Petersburg's most beloved institutions, the historic Palladium Theatre, is getting a makeover. The 100-year-old theatre will close next summer for a multi-million-dollar renovation. Now, for more, we're joined by Paul Wilborn. He's the Executive Director of Palladium Theatre at St. Petersburg College. Paul, thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it.
Good morning. Glad to be here.
Indeed. So the Palladium was built in 1925. Originally it was a church, right? So describe what it looks like and feels like today for somebody who's never seen it.
It's an incredible building. It's one of the most beautiful historic buildings in St. Petersburg, not only built by a famous architect, but the company that built it in the 20s built the Flatiron Building in New York. It's just a magnificent structure. It was a church up until the mid-90s, but that population had dwindled, and some visionary folks in St. Petersburg saw it and realized it had theater seats and bought it and made a theater out of it. With the idea that we have an affordable community venue. A lot of our big venues like Mahaffey and Straz and Ruth Eckerd are great, but they're not affordable to the community to do shows. So that's who we are, and we've been doing it since 1998 when they all launched their first season.
Right, so you're sort of bridging some of the, I guess, the space between amateur theatre and the more expensive kind of high-priced tickets at other venues.
Yeah, when you look at what our big performing arts centers are for, they're for big rock and pop shows, road shows, Broadway, all that stuff. That's who they need to be. The community needs places where our Nutcracker just sold out 4 performances over the weekend, and every dancer there was from St. Petersburg and trained in St. Petersburg. It was a local production. Mm-hmm. That's kind of who we are.
Yeah. Okay. So it's a place for people who are like the performing arts, like the folks to kind of cut their teeth on the stage, if that's a metaphor I can mix up there, and also for people who can kind of come and see some of the stuff.
Yeah, and we really support local performers. That's one of our biggest things. Musicians of all kinds. We're a home for the best talent in the area: jazz, blues, spoken acoustic, opera, chamber music. We really focus on being a home for the talent we have in the Tampa Bay region.
If you're just joining us on Florida Matters Live and Local, we're talking with Paul Wilborn, who's the Executive Director of Palladium Theatre at St. Petersburg College, talking about the upcoming renovation to the theatre. So, I mean, just to kind of go back in history a little bit, since it became a theatre, you mentioned the Nutcracker, of course, the sort of seasonal offering you have there, but you've seen a lot of performances, right? Concerts, speeches, any notable events at the theatre or even before when it was a church over the years that people may be surprised to learn about?
Well, it's funny we talk about being so local, but the show that really put us on the map happened in 2009, and this guy named Billy Joel wanted to do a college show, and they reached out to us, and we welcomed Billy Joel to our stage, and we had made about $1 million in improvements to the building at that point, and his show sold out, of course, and it really put us on the map. Our business just took off after that show. So we got to thank Billy for that.
Yeah, okay. Now, for performers, for the audience, I mean, what are the limitations in the theatre that you have now? What are you going to change when you undertake this renovation?
Yeah, we've had an incredible run, but really we're a church with a stage and some lights. The building is really good upstairs for acoustic music, chamber music and the like. But when we start plugging in amplifiers and getting bands that are amplified and doing rock and pop, the building starts to bounce. The sound begins to bounce a little bit. It's just not as pleasant as it ought to be. So much of this renovation is about seating, sightlines, and acoustics. We're also replacing our 100-year-old seats with some modern seats that look like they belong in the building, but will be much more comfortable and a little wider, and all have a great view of the stage.
All right, so they'll look the part, but they're not going to feel like you're sitting on a 100-year-old piece of equipment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
After about an hour, it starts to wear on certain parts of your body. So we're going to be a big improvement. And we also don't have great viewing lines to the stage from the audience. So we're fixing that. And our lighting positions, we're dropping in an acoustic ceiling. We're working with an incredible team of architects and theatrical consultants. They're our dream team, and it's going to be worth every penny of about $12 million.
Yeah, and that's a pretty substantial sum. I mean, just thinking about the sightlines, though, I mean, is that a matter of, do you have to build up the kind of like more of a bank on the seats? Like, how do you do that?
Well, honestly, we are doing that in the balcony because we do have a problem there. In our downstairs orchestra, the seats are all lined up right behind each other. There's no gap. They're not staggered. And so we really don't need to change the rake. We just need to rearrange the way the seats are put out there, and everybody's going to have a good view. We're losing about 50 seats from where we are now, but we couldn't sell those 50 seats anyway. So we're going to be a perfectly sized hall with great views from all directions, and we don't have to raise our prices. We're still going to be the most affordable place in town.
What about, I got to ask about a favorite haunt for Florida Matters roadshows too, the mildly subterranean side door cabaret located underneath the main theater. Is that going to change?
We're going to do a little bit of work there. Most of our money is being spent upstairs, but I do have some plans to just improve that a bit. That's still my favorite room. You guys had a great show down there. We present live jazz and blues and stand-up comedy and all sorts of things down there. And it's going to remain. We don't know. We're going to have to close for 12 months. We don't know if I'll be able to use that room while we're closed. At this point, we just don't know. We'll know more in the new year as this project gets closer to happening.
I got to ask too, I mean, that 12-month hiatus, are you a little bit nervous about that? Because as you describe it, it's such a hub for performances in the community. Like, what can you do in the meantime to give people what they need and want in terms of artistic performances while you're out of commission?
We've been working with all of our major clients like the Nutcracker and St. Pete Opera. This has been a 3-year process to get to this point. So everybody who uses the Palladium knows what's happening. And really, they're very supportive. They want a better theater. So the opera is going to do performances at their home, smaller performances, more of them. Everybody's kind of working on some plans. And we're going to do a few things off-site. And at this point, I'm still not sure if we'll have the nightclub. If we do, we'll be doing a lot of shows in the nightclub. And we've raised enough money and we've made a pledge to keep our full-time staff on board during this process.
Got about 20 seconds here, Paul, but I mean, you mentioned the money, about $12 million. I know there's about $2.5 million coming from a grant from Pinellas County Tourism Development Tax. You did a lot of fundraising. How did you get here?
It's really a mix. The city has stepped up. City of St. Petersburg, the state of Florida put in $1.8 million over 2 sessions. The county tourist board, but we've also raised over $8 million privately. So it's been a nice mix of public and private fundraising. People appreciate what we're doing and they want to support us.
Paul Wilborn, Executive Director of Palladium Theatre at St. Petersburg College, thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
Well, coming up next, questions linger over the safety of police chases after last month's fatal crash in Ybor City. We're going to talk about that, and we want to hear from you. If you want to weigh in, you can call 813-755-6562. That's 813-755-6562. You can also email FloridaMatters@WUSF.org. You're listening to Florida Matters, live and local. Stay tuned, much more to come.
At WUSF, support comes from the people who listen, like you. Also, Seitenbacher, with a new web shop. Healthy muesli, cold-pressed oils, and vegetable broth mix delivered to your door from right here in Tampa Bay. Details at Seitenbacher.com. Seitenbacher. Seitenbacher. Bach Tower Gardens hosts Dreamweaver, Tales from the Trees. It's an all-new immersive art exhibition where the lines between nature and the mystical blur with fairies, sprites, and more. Details at BachTowerGardens.org.
On the next Fresh Air, homelessness in America. Patrick Markey spent 2 decades walking through New York City's tunnels, armories, and intake centers where families sleep on floors. His new book, Placeless, asks, what if homelessness isn't a personal failing, but a political choice? And what if the solution is simpler than we think? Join us.
Great conversation on Fresh Air tonight at 7 on WUSF.
Welcome back to Florida Matters Live and Local. I'm Matthew Petty. 4 people were killed and 13 injured when a car plowed into a crowd in Ybor City a month ago. The driver, 22-year-old Silas Sampson, faces more than 40 charges, including homicide. The Florida Highway Patrol says Sampson alone is to blame. But the crash did spark residents and officials to question these chases. Could more be done to ensure the sidewalks and storefronts in Ybor City are safe? Today, we're focusing on how and when decisions are made to pursue a fleeing suspect. With us is retired Police Captain Thomas Gleason. He's a national trainer for Pursuit Safety. It's a non-profit working to reduce deaths and injuries resulting from vehicular police pursuits. Thomas, thank you so much for joining us. Really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me on behalf of Pursuit Safety.
And if you've got a question, let us know, 813-755-6562. That's 813-755-6562. You can also send us an email, FloridaMatters@WUSF.org. So, Thomas, you're an experienced police officer. What made you want to focus on this safety issue? I mean, what did you see as a police officer that told you something has to change here?
Well, I have a long history of training going back into the 80s with agencies. But what really started my focus when we started talking about driving and educating, especially law enforcement and policies and stuff, was after losing my son as a military police officer at Fort Polk, Louisiana, where he was killed as a passenger MP in a patrol car. He burned up in the patrol car when they left the road running 85 miles an hour. So that impacted me. And from that, I started training law enforcement in driving and the use of emergency equipment. And this has been kind of one of my callings since that. And then that was all the way back to 2000.
Wow, that sounds like a very traumatic experience to come through for. But you've sort of channeled, I guess, your grief into something constructive?
Yes, sir. I've probably from that standpoint, there's been I trained for several years for the Department of Justice in a program called Valor, where we traveled throughout the United States doing training on officer safety. And of course, when we talk about pursuits, that falls back in, it's public safety, but it's officer safety too.
So let me bring the focus to Ybor City. Now, Silas Sampson's the driver police say was behind the wheel when his car slammed into a crowd outside an Ybor City nightclub last month. A few days ago, he was in court facing new charges tied to DUI. They had to wait for the toxicology report to come back. I mean, how does driving under the influence change the calculus for officials when they're weighing up whether to pursue or not?
Well, we take the stand along with the Police Executive Research Forum when they actually held a symposium in 23 that to chase vehicles, when you limit it, and then you limit it for violent felonies only, not just for traffic violations, or what we started out here was possibly racing. You won't pursue those because the risk to the public and to the officers involved is too great for that during the pursuit.
The number is 813-755-6562, 813-755-6562. If you're just joining us on Florida Matters Live and Local, talking about the questions raised by the police pursuit, last month's deadly crash in Ybor City, 4 people dead, 13 injured. outside a nightclub in Ybor City. And with us is Thomas Gleason. He's a retired police captain and national trainer for Pursuit Safety, a non-profit working to reduce deaths and injuries resulting from vehicular police pursuits. If you've got questions, we'd like to hear them. 813-755-6562. So, Thomas, I mean, the timeline in this case is really short, and I'm sure in a lot of cases this is probably true, right? Just 2 minutes or so, I understand, from FHP giving chase to when the car jumped the sidewalk, killing and injuring people at Bradley's on 7th. I mean, when Florida Highway Patrol say they backed off, but it's not really a lot of time for anyone to slow down. So what questions does that raise for you?
The questions go back to policies. We go back to and we start looking at policy, and let's look at we'll look at the other one in your area, and that's Tampa Police Department. After a pursuit resulted in the death of a female several years ago, I think it's about 2 years ago now. I remember getting a phone call on it, and it was over a stolen vehicle. That one was. They changed the policy and changed the training, so that goes back to it. Some other concerns on me is on this one was you actually had an aviation unit up that could have been monitoring this pursuit.
Now, just to kind of put that in plain language, Thomas, sorry to interrupt you, but when you say aviation unit, you mean a helicopter, right?
Yeah, a helicopter. Tampa Police Department had a helicopter, was up, was monitoring the pursuit. Now, we've got some concerns there. Well, we have a breakdown in communications, but once you do have air assets up, even if it's a forcible felony, the air assets take over the pursuit. Most all policies I've reviewed, and I have reviewed over 100 of them nationwide, they will put that in there. Once airs they take over the pursuits, and the vehicles will back off the pursuit.
I should note, too, we did reach out to the Florida Highway Patrol. We also reached out to Tampa Police to invite them on the program. They weren't available, but the offer to talk with us here on Florida Matters live and local stands. I mean, Thomas, you told WSF, and you've told other news outlets too, that this pursuit shouldn't have happened. So when you look at all the facts in this case, why would you say that?
Well, look at the violation that we had. We had a traffic violation, which was possibly drag racing. Now let's throw in there some other things too that we need to always look at pursuits. What is the chances of apprehending this person at a later point in time once we have the tag on the car, especially now with all of the numbers of cameras that we have? This should drastically reduce pursuits because of we have the tag number is not a stolen car, so we can follow it up with the information just like we would any other criminal investigation and make an apprehension at a later time. So what we call it deferred arrest on it. We can follow up. We have the information to do the follow-up.
If you're just joining us on Florida Matters Live and Local, we're talking with the retired police chief, Thomas Gleason, about police chases. Last month's fatal crash in Ybor City has prompted questions about when law enforcement should chase a fleeing suspect. Maybe you've got questions too. Maybe you were there. Have you been chased even? Let us know. 813-755-6562. That's 813-755-6562. So, I mean, talk more about this kind of collaboration or the coordination between the different agencies, because to your point, the Florida Highway Patrol was chasing the suspect. Tampa Police had a chopper up in the air. I mean, is it typical for the agencies to work together like this?
Yes, it is. But what we have, and we've seen this on many occasions, they're working on different radio frequencies. So the ability to patch those in with a state system, you have the ability to patch in, but you have to get it done quickly. So then we always look at these as after action report. And that's one of the things we look in the after action report and make sure that in all pursuits, any and all pursuits should have an after action in it, to see if they were within our training standards, see if we're within the policies, see if we're within state laws and federal laws.
Are you invited in to, by the likes of, say, Tampa Police Department or Florida Highway Patrol when something like this happens? Like, how do you actually work with these law enforcement agencies?
I haven't been invited in with theirs. I will tell you, I have trained some of the troopers in when we did the instructor for driver training at the State Academy, and I've also trained in an instructor technique at the State Academy for several years. I'm, of course, retired now. But then in addition to that, I have been invited in by agencies. There was one out of Louisiana that invited Pursuit Safety to go in and look at their policy after they had a pursuit in which 2 young ladies were killed late at night. And actually, on that one was the local, and it wasn't I think it was a district attorney, because they don't have state attorneys there. I think it was this attorney that made charges on the officer involved. But when they redid their policy and their training, they asked me to take a look at it and see if I had any suggestions of that. That's happened to me several times over with different agencies after pursuits. And Pursuit Safety is more than happy to contribute at any point in time with any agency and with an open dialogue on it.
I want to come back to that communication point you were making earlier about the radio frequencies. My understanding, this is from some reporting in the Tampa Bay Times, the Florida Highway Patrol had been given some radios from the Tampa Police Department. I mean, is that typical? Like, would they be sharing that kind of equipment to make coordination easier?
Yes, and I encourage any way that you can have better communications, because you look at just in your area the number of agencies that you have, and each one of them, they're not on a similar radio network. So when you have that, any way that you can close that loop where everybody can be on the same page, because if not, I know being with working for 2 different state agencies, I know that it was very helpful. All state agencies are on the same net.
Yeah.
But when you start breaking it down for other cities, that's where you start losing, because you can be right on top of something and not even know what's going on with a state agency. So yes, I encourage anytime you can, any way that you can close that gap where you have the communications. And if we had that, and he knew that. And here's the other one, the term we call it is cross-pollinate. Have we done training together on this?
So in this case, you were saying, has, for example, in this case, the Tampa Police Department, have they trained with Florida Highway Patrol on what to do if a situation like this arises?
Yeah, and you can do it in a tabletop exercise, or you can do it where you're actually training and having together when you do a training.
Yeah, I imagine though. I mean,
we're going to be conducting a training exercise at wherever the training center is, and that we would like to invite you to look at ours and provide input. Mine is the more that you can get input from other people, the better job that you can do. And that the one that goes back, and it comes back to what you said, is when I look at this, then what I look at is, have we best served the public in the way that this happened? And all of our actions, we need to be thinking about public safety. That needs to be first and foremost.
Right. So let me ask a question about that then, because I mean, there's we're talking about decisions that are made in a matter of seconds or minutes, and there isn't a lot of time to make these split-second decisions. The law enforcement are obviously weighing up, is it safer to try and get this person off the road now, or do we pull back? Like, how does that calculus play out?
Well, first, to start the pursuit, what are we starting the pursuit over? If it's a minor violation, it's not worth the risk. So, and that's been one that we've seen over and over. The Police Executive Research Forum in 2023 did a study, and they come out, their recommendations was you do not chase for something other than forcible type felonies. So that'd be robbery, murder, or something along those lines.
Yeah. Have you seen anything comparable to what happened in Ybor City last month in other states?
Ultimately, and I get probably 3 to 4 phone calls a month from throughout the United States, and actually as far away as Australia before, discussing pursuits. And this was ultimately the worst one I've ever seen.
In the last 30 seconds or so we have here, I mean, why is it that different agencies have different policies on pursuit?
Well, each one has to address the needs of their community, And then it goes back to how much liability are you willing to risk to your own officers, to your own sworn personnel, and to the general public. And when you start chasing for minor violations, the risk factors they're just drastically increased. Just like speed, as speed goes up, safety goes down.
We've been talking with retired Police Captain Thomas Gleason, safety trainer for Pursuit Safety. It's a non-profit working to reduce deaths and injuries from vehicular police pursuits. Thomas, thank you so much for your insights.
Thanks for having us.
Coming up next, say you need to get across town stat, don't speed, but would you trust a robot to get you there on time? Waymo is bringing self-driving taxis to Tampa. We'll talk about that in a moment. Stay tuned to Florida Matters, live and local. More to come after this.
WUSF thanks Community Foundation Tampa Bay for a generous grant supporting our Edward R. Murrow Award for Overall Excellence in Large Market Radio. Your investment in public media helps us serve our community. Thank you for believing in WUSF. The Museum of Fine Arts in St. Petersburg is proud to present the electrifying art of Baroque master Caravaggio. Experience the drama and intensity of Caravaggio's world with over 40 stunning canvases, including works by artists he inspired. More at mfastpete.org.
I'm Scott Tong. An author adopted from Korea in the 80s grew up yearning for information on her birth parents.
I remember thinking this would be so much easier if I had just known them all along. If I could always just ask them questions.
But as an adult, she found that open communication and open adoptions have their own complications. Next time, Here and Now.
Join us this afternoon from 1 to 3 on WUSF 89.7.
Life is busy, and you may not feel like you have enough time to catch up on what's going on around you. Hi, I'm Aaliyah Leiden. WUSF's Wake Up Call is a great way to get bite-sized updates every weekday morning, with weather, local news, national developments, and a friendly greeting. Plus, there are links, so you can explore more if you want to. Start your day feeling informed and connected. Sign up for your Wake Up Call at WUSF.org.
Welcome back to Florida Matters, live and local. I'm Matthew Petty. Okay, think about this. You just got off a plane, or maybe you're rushing to the airport. You jump in the back of an Uber or Lyft or perhaps a taxi and discover that no one is in the driver's seat. Waymo, the autonomous vehicle company owned by Google's parent company, Alphabet, is already offering robo-taxi rides in places like San Francisco, Los Angeles, and Phoenix. And now Waymo wants to roll out robo-taxis in Tampa. Well, to tell us more, we're joined by Sean O'Kane. He's a senior reporter covering transportation with TechCrunch. Sean, thanks for being with us.
Thanks for having me.
And if you've got questions about Waymo in Tampa, call and let's talk 813-755-6562. Would you take a ride in an autonomous vehicle? And how would you feel about sharing the road with these robo-taxis? The number again, 813-755-6562. You can also email us at FloridaMatters@WUSF.org. So, Sean, have you ridden in a Waymo?
Yeah, I have a couple times.
What's it like?
It's eerie, especially the first few times, but even after that, I think it's still a pretty out-of-body experience. And, I think they've done a lot of good work over the last few years as they started to initially slowly develop and ramp up this technology of making it feel, a bit more human-like. I think if you gotten one of these things a year or two ago, it would have felt a little more jerky and just awkward in a way that a human driver has the ability not to say all human drivers out there are perfect.
Yeah, right.
But it's, you can get, I think after you go through a couple of these rides in a place like San Francisco now, you actually just start to get kind of used to it, which is, I think, a surprising thing considering where we were a few years ago, where it didn't look like we were about to hit this rollout as quickly as we have.
Yeah, but I wonder if that's that surprising when you think about how people are so reliant on, say, if you got an iPhone, people are always saying, "Hey Siri, do this for me," or "that for me," or "Alexa, play this song for me," right? So people seem to have become pretty comfortable with that sort of interaction with a robot. So is this that much different?
Oh, I think so, because there's just something different about being moving through the physical world in a technology like this that is just, there really hasn't been anything quite like that. We have some automated trains, we have autopilot on planes, but you're not in tight confines with that technology in a way that you are in something like a Waymo, especially in the current version right now. They're using Jaguar I-Paces pretty much everywhere. And, those are comfortable, but they're not enormous vehicles of any kind. You are sitting there and you are able to watch the steering wheel turn as the car is turning. So I think there's just an immediacy to that, and the fact that you're actually kind of traversing the world that still feels, again, sort of out of body.
Yeah. If you're just joining us on Florida Matters Live and Local, we're talking with Sean O'Kane, senior reporter with TechCrunch, about Waymo's plan to launch robo-taxi service in Tampa. If you've got a question about this, give us a call. Are you okay with the idea of autonomous cars sharing the road with you? We're at 813-755-6562. That's 813-755-6562. I mean, Sean, the rollout of Waymo has not been entirely smooth, right? As you'd expect. Let's just hear a little bit of sound from a video. This is a man named Mike Johns. He was taking one of the driverless taxis to the airport in Phoenix about a year ago.
Okay, why is this happening to me on a Monday? I'm in a Waymo car.
Connected to rider support. This call may be recorded for quality assurance.
This car is just going in circles.
Hi there, Mike. This is Gab. I'm calling from Waymo support. I'm just calling because I received a notification that your car might be experiencing some routing issue. Please bear with me while I am...
Yeah, I got a flight to catch. Why is this thing going in a circle? I'm getting dizzy. Look at what it's doing.
All right, so I'm sure you're familiar with this story, Sean. There was also a story about San Francisco Bay Area residents being woken up by Waymo cars honking at each other overnight as they navigated a parking lot. I think that was last year. And then let me just read this headline from the Wall Street Journal. Waymo's self-driving cars are suddenly behaving like New York cabbies. And the article goes on to describe autonomous vehicles adopting human-like qualities like making illegal U-turns and flooring it the second a stoplight goes green. I mean, this is a service that Google initially started working on with the self-driving vehicle unit back in 2009. They launched the robo-taxi service in Phoenix in 2020 before expanding to more places. I mean, you'd expect some hiccups along the way, right? So what's actually worked well and what hasn't gone so well as they've deployed these taxis across the country?
Yeah, I think a couple things. One, to the sort of Wall Street Journal article, I think there's naturally going to be some kind of negotiation with the engineers at Waymo as far as how human-like do you want to make these things drive versus not. Do you want them to be creeping out into intersections, or do you not want to program that behavior in? And that's one of those things that really is only going to get resolved the longer this goes on and the more that Waymo gets customer feedback from people in different places. It might be the case that people in certain cities are used to more aggressive driving, and so they'll tune the vehicles to drive like that in that area versus in a different place. The video of the guy getting sort of stuck in a loop going around in Phoenix is a really good example of one of the biggest problems that I think Waymo's still working on, and I think all of these companies are going to be working on solving for a while, which is just negotiating pickup and drop-off areas is still a very difficult thing. Being on the road, avoiding other cars, making sure you're a good sort of citizen of the road, that's all extremely challenging, but Waymo's done a good job building up the technology to handle that. But there's just so much that happens in the process of dropping somebody off or picking somebody up, whether that's at an airport or at a business or even just at the destination that they've chosen, on a street somewhere in San Francisco or Tampa, maybe someday, where you have to, there's just so many little pieces of that puzzle that we absorb as people who drive regularly that it's hard to program that stuff or build up an artificial intelligence algorithm that can negotiate those things. Do you pull right up to the curb? Do you kind of angle in? There's all these things that Waymo's still working out. So that's definitely something that they're going to need to keep working on. Especially at places that are high pressure, like an airport. That's why we've seen them take a much slower approach to those kinds of things. Right now, they're really only doing pick up and drop off at Phoenix Airport and San Jose in the Bay Area. They still haven't gone to San Francisco, even though they're about to, probably later this year or early next year.
Yeah, or LAX. I mean, that place can be a bit of a nightmare, right?
Exactly, yeah.
Okay, so what do you know about Waymo's plans for Tampa? Are they going to be testing these on the roads before they offer rides? What can you share?
We don't have a super clear picture about the way they want to roll this out, but roughly speaking, the way they're handling some of these cities, if they're not coming out and saying right away, specifically, we want to launch a commercial service here, then the way they usually go about it is they'll bring the cars there, they'll manually drive them around to collect data on the city and make sure that their system has sort of seen as much of the city as it can in the initial part. And then they let the cars start to sort of prove out the technology in that city with a safety operator behind the wheel ready to take over in case the car, finds a situation that the computer system can't really navigate. And then at that point, it really becomes a conversation, I think, with the city and also other partners as to how a commercial rollout is going to go, because Waymo's actually really taking a different approach in multiple cities. Like, they are running their own robotaxi service in San Francisco, but in Austin or Atlanta, say, they are actually working with Uber, and you can only hail these on the Uber app. And so I don't know exactly what their plans are for Tampa. They've announced so many cities. I mean, they're up over 20 cities now, including Tokyo and London, that they want to launch in the next couple of years. And so I would imagine that there will continue to be a diverse set of approaches as to like how they actually want to handle what the service will look like in that city. To your point really quickly earlier about the people who were dealing with parking lots and honking in San Francisco, that's also been a big issue in Santa Monica in Los Angeles, where they've kind of been at loggerheads with people who live right near these two particular depots in Santa Monica for a while now. And I think that's one of the big question marks here is, how does Waymo sort of do that kind of handshake with a city? How does it get itself ingratiated with the community? And how does it make sure that it's building out the infrastructure that it does need to charge the vehicles, to clean them, to service them, and in a way that is not going to just completely steamroll the life of a particular neighborhood?
And speaking of that, I mean, what have you heard from Uber and Lyft drivers and other, car share services, or even taxi drivers from that matter too? I imagine they're worried about this potential threat to their livelihoods.
Yeah, I mean, it's a tension. I think a lot of those folks are, on one hand, I think they're all quite focused on the near term of how much money can I make? How much can I pressure these companies like Uber and Lyft to make sure that they're giving me as big a cut as I feel I deserve? And so I think that's probably the bigger issue for them. I do think that the balance of how many autonomous vehicles are going to be on a network versus human-driven vehicles is not going to tip as quickly as we might think, even though we're seeing robotaxis rolled out. And so that's just going to be a negotiation that's going to happen over the next couple of years, really, between those drivers and these companies that employ them as contractors. And it's really going to be up to those companies like Uber and Lyft to manage those relationships as best they can. But otherwise, it's still a pretty big question mark. We're not really sure what that transition is going to look like, and whether or not, honestly, we still don't know for sure if this is all going to continue to work at scale. Waymo's done a very good job so far. It's got, it's released some reviewed safety statistics that show it's about 5 times safer than the average driver, and about 12 times safer for pedestrians on the road, which is good. But we need to see this at scale for a long time to really understand how worth it that's going to be, and whether they're able to get the unit economics down to a point where they can justify the cost. And the more that they expand into all these new cities and do it quickly, we're going to run into issues where we're going to need to see them iron out some of these problems.
Real quick, if I could, I mean, there was a story recently about a recall of software after numerous Waymo cars passed a stopped school bus. I mean, is that worse than some of the other glitches we've talked about?
I think this is an issue that we need a lot more information from Waymo on. Really quickly, there was a video shot in Atlanta in September of a Waymo sort of pulling out in front of a stopped school bus and making a left turn around it. Waymo at the time tried to present that as an isolated incident, but KXAN in Austin did a really good job pulling some public records, getting some video. They found around 20 incidents like that happening in different, passing buses in different ways, but passing stop school buses. And that's clearly a concern. Waymo had said that they had released a software update to address that issue earlier, since the September incident, but that software issue apparently didn't fix everything. And so, it's stuff like that, and we also have issues like it running over.
Still to be determined. Yeah, we're going to have to leave it there, Sean, but fascinating conversation. I'm sure we'd love to talk with you more on it, and we will talk with you more in a future episode. But for now, Sean O'Kane, senior reporter with TechCrunch, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Coming up tomorrow on Florida Matters Live and Local, South St. Pete's considered a food desert. People who live there have a hard time getting fresh food. We'll talk about what that means. Stay with us for Florida Matters Live and Local, coming at you tomorrow at 12 noon.
Listener support powers WUSF. Funding also comes from Caldwell Trust Company, an organization which has been navigating clients toward their financial goals since 1993, building wealth and preserving legacy, the way it's meant to be. Learn more at ctrust.com. Shorecrest is a nationally recognized independent school serving students from age 3 through 12th grade. The mission is academic excellence, physical well-being, creative